And then there was one is the 16th episode of the second season of The Golden Girls. This is directed by Terry Hughes. And as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode. I will go through things chronologically and share some thoughts. I like this episode. It's not one of my favourites, but my personal highlights would be basically anything that came out of Dorothy or Rose's mouth. I didn't write down too many actual quotes, but just anything they said. Rose being completely oblivious to a lot of things, and Dorothy's really quick wit in this episode especially was fabulous. It starts off actually really, really, really entertaining. That was maybe one too many reallys, but really well done, with Sophia eating linguine with clam sauce for breakfast. And Dorothy comes in and asks her what she's eating, and she says linguine with clam sauce. Rose comes in and asks her what she's eating. She says linguine with clam sauce. Blanche comes in, and by this point she's had enough of explaining this. And she actually goes on to further explain that this is because she is carbo loading, because she's taking part in a charity walkathon. And it turns out that Rose has actually signed everybody up to take part, but not in the same way as Sophia. She's actually signed them up to do babysitting for the people who are doing the walk. And I don't know if this is an amazing idea or a terrible idea, because I imagine a lot of people who are doing it will have children and they need to find somebody to look after the children. But also, you're signing up, first of all, to look after children you've never met. Second of all, for people to leave their children with you, strangers. I know it was the 80s, it was a different time, but it doesn't seem like a good idea. Nevertheless, this is what happens, and Sophia is ready to go. She has her race number on her bag, which I thought was a brilliant idea. It's such a small detail. They don't even mention it, but I thought it was very effective. And then the first child comes over. It's a little boy called Norman, played by Christopher Burton, who has a long list of dislikes and no likes, and he calls Dorothy the Bride of Frankenstein, which I thought was pretty funny. And we then cut to the backyard, and there's a whole bunch of children there, mostly children of a similar age, of about 8 or 10 years old. And Norman, being Norman, smashes up 3 children's clay models, and Rose just smashes her fist down on his, not making a big deal out of it. It was just really rhythmic. He smashed 3 and then Rose smashed his, and he got what he deserved, and I thought it was pretty good. And Dorothy and Blanche are talking about what they're going to do with the children, and they don't really know what to do with them. And one of them says, if you're going to relate to a child, it helps to have the mind of a child. And in perfect timing, Rose comes out of the house, bashing a pan lid with a parade of children behind her, which was fabulous, very entertaining. We then cut to the end of the day, and there's just one baby left, one little baby called Emily. And they get a call from the walkathon, and the walkathon says that everybody's gone, everybody's finished. So Emily's parents should have come to pick her up, and they start to worry that she'd been abandoned. And they do phone the police, and the police says they have 2 options. They can either take Emily down to the police station, or because it's not just a baby they found, the baby was left in their care, they can hold on to the baby, if you like, until CPS calls them within, I think they said, 48 hours. And Rose then tells a story about the time she was nearly abandoned, and it was as delightful as Rose's stories always are. And they realise they're going to hold on to the baby, at least for the meantime. Dorothy and Rose go off to the all-night store, and then we have a scene where they're putting away the shopping, which sounds boring, but actually the dialogue that flowed between the characters in that scene I really liked. I thought that was very funny, very entertaining, very well done. And Dorothy makes a passing comment that didn't really have any weight to it. She just said, if we had to, I bet the 3 of us could raise her. And Blanche kind of held on to that and started to almost wonder if she could raise her. And Blanche is carrying the baby a lot and holding her and looking after her, and it's really rather sweet. And then I will say that it's a little bit anticlimactic with what happened with her parents. I know that this is a sitcom, it's not meant to be that dramatic, but I did feel like it was a little bit flat. There's a knock at the door, it's Emily's father. It turns out he did actually phone, and he spoke to Sophia, but Sophia because of something that happened during the race, was actually talking to a lot of people, journalists and things, about what happened. She didn't really fully comprehend that this was Emily's father, so the message never got passed on. But his wife had actually had triplets, which makes me wonder how old Emily is. Presumably, his wife is Emily's mother. Might not be, you never know, but she just had triplets. How old is Emily? They must be pretty close in age, and to have 4 children, potentially under 1 year old, that's going to be difficult. Irrelevant to the story, though. And Emily then goes, and Blanche phones her daughter. She phones Janet, and this is the final scene, and it genuinely got a little bit emotional. And I can't relate to this, because I don't have children, and certainly I don't have grown-up children who are busy doing their own things, but I imagine that this is something a lot of people can relate to. If your children have flown the nest, you maybe don't see them as much as you'd like, and Blanche is trying to get Janet to pick a date or a time when she can visit her, and just as it seems like Janet isn't really playing along and picking a date and really accommodating her mother, the sad music begins to play, and I was like, come on, I don't want to cry at this. And then thankfully it picked up a bit, and I think they picked this coming weekend, if I remember correctly, and it was a lovely way to end things, and it's nice to dig a little bit deeper into Blanche's character as well. So I thought that was really sweet. Yes, the whole thing with Emily was rather anticlimactic, but I didn't mind it too much. We do have some great moments throughout it. Sophia was great. Dorothy and Rose, I thought in particular, were the source of comedy, and then with Blanche we have something a little bit more serious and a bit more moving. So all round, it's a brilliant episode. And then there was one, generally is pretty great, and aside from wishing, that's going to sound horrible, but I wish the story with Emily was maybe a little bit more dramatic, but other than that, very great episode. And then there was one is generally one I'm pretty pleased with.